Hello, Tom. I want to welcome you to my shop. Thank you for letting me work on your beautiful 69. This thing's got a Lincoln Felter 427 in it, stall converter. It's about a 2,000 RPM stall converter. Runs and drives unbelievable. The power and the sound out the back with the top down and this fall weather is just a wonderful ride. When I went on my test drive, I took me a notepad and made notes of any noises I heard or any smells or vibrations or all that stuff, and made notes. And I came back, put it on the lift, went up underneath it, checked all the underside of it. Then I went around the body and checked for loose panels, loose parts, any of that stuff, and made notes of it as well. So not a whole lot here. It's actually here just for the taillights, but as I checked out the taillights, I found out it's a lot of oxidation, rust at the ground points, and bad housings. So I've got all that out, and I'll go over this list and what I've got going right now. I've got a nice parts order list ordered, and it's on the way from Corvette Central, I think it is. So let me give you a walk around of what I'm going to do here to your car. Back here on the back, I've got all the housings out and all the lights out, and what I found was the grounds and the connecting grounds that connect the lights and the actual sockets and all that are just terribly oxidized. So I'm going to replace all these grounds and straps and housings and all that. I'm going to try to get this fiber optic stuff working again. So it has a fiber optic light in here, and I'm going to put really bright LEDs to hopefully transfer that light, and it just runs down that fiber tube to the dash or to the console and lights up a little indicator on that. So not sure if I can get that working, but I think I can. I have some fiber optic left, and I've ordered the new ends, and we'll see how that goes. This fiber optic one, it looks like it got on the exhaust or something. I'm not sure how that got melted up, but it's melted up pretty bad right there. Rest of it I've checked out back here. I got a C loose right here. I'm going to try to tighten it up. But that's about all I'm going to do right there. Over here, I've got a list of everything. So this is my list I've got on here. I've got stuff like the starter wires need securing, rear brake lines, the power steering's got a little leak, it needs a new cylinder, the speedometer cable's laying on that new exhaust and it's burnt. The exhaust is touching the frame a little bit, but I'm not going to mess with that. It's where it goes through those frame tubes, and it's a real tight fit. It doesn't make any noise or rattle or anything. I'll leave it alone. I noticed the body's got a new frame under it, so I've got to work on getting that readjusted. Whoever put the frame under it didn't really get those body panels set. I'm not sure if I can help it, but I'm going to try. The driver's seat needs some work on it, and just a few little Mickey Mouse stuff here on that list. Here's my parts list that's going out to Corvette Central, and I've got it all ordered and on the way. I've ordered you LEDs. I got extra, but I went ahead and got red ones, orange ones, and just white ones, and I'm going to see what looks best. Like if these red ones look better in that back, which they probably will, I'm going to put them in there. Not sure if there's a bright as a white. That's why I went ahead and bought some of each. I'll use these in my stock order for the shop, and then just pick which ones I want to use in your car. I've ordered you LEDs that have a built-in resistor in it to make your flasher work. The flasher usually won't work with these LEDs because there's no load to trigger the flasher, where these have a built-in load in them and should trigger that flasher without having to change that. And then I've got LED backup lights. It's going to be really, really bright. I'm going to reuse your original taillight housings. These are the ones that come with the car, so I don't want to change them. I'm going to try to keep all the cars original as possible, but I am going to have to change all these housings. All these housings are oxidized inside there. A lot of times the body from here to here oxidizes, and that's where the socket is, and sometimes it's hard to get them to work. So it's best sometimes just to change all this out, and I'll resolder all those wires back in place. These little ground wires here, I'm going to remake new ones, and you can see the little bit of rust on those. They were actually hooked to these, which are just terribly rusty. I did a walk around the car. I'm going to try to reset some of these body panels where they put the new frame under it. It's not exactly where it needs to be. Sometimes I can change some stuff, sometimes I can't. It's out right here. It's quite a big gap right there, so I'm going to try to lower it a little right there, and raise it just a little right there, and if I can close that one up, and then I'm going to try to raise the back of the car a little bit to close that one up, doing that with the body bushings. I need to secure this mirror. I just noticed that this mirror is loose, and then it's actually loose on the door. So I'll try to tighten that if I can. I've already went through and tightened some of these. Most of these were kind of loose. Some of them had strip screws. I've got them all tight, put new screws in them, and that's in good shape. Hadn't seen anything under the hood. I'm going to do a little more inspecting on it as I work on it, but it seems to be fine. I don't see any issues with any of that. It's just running good, feeling good. Just needs a few little knick-knack stuff. Then in here on inside, I'm gonna pull both your seats out and try to tighten them up. They're extremely floppy and rattly. I've got new pivots coming for the sides down here. I've got some new stops to go down in here. The old stop was actually broke off, so I'm going to have to drill and tap and put the new one there and the new one on top, and try to secure all this to where they're not flopping so bad. But mostly this car is all original, and I'm going to try to keep all this stuff as original as possible. But this is an all original 427 Stingray convertible. What a nice car. So I'm waiting on my parts to come in. When parts come in, I'll give you an update on as we go along and make these repairs. Hey Tom, quick update on your car. So I spent a little time yesterday evening working on aligning the body up a little bit, and it's always a can of worms because this thing has been together for so long and a lot of stuff is frozen, so I really have to proceed with caution when I start doing this. But I was able to lower the car right here on this mount. About 3 millimeters is about all I could get out of it. If I was to take the body completely loose, all the bumpers loose and all that, I might get a little more out of this. But as with what I did yesterday, I got about 3 lower on this. I raised it a little bit in the front. I raised it about 3 on that side at that mount. Lowered it a little bit at the front right there, just all I had available in it without disassembling a lot of stuff. I had to change the latch strike a little bit on both side doors. I raised it in the back just a little bit on both sides as far as it would let me without doing a lot more work. And added some spacers on this side and took some out on the other side. And you can tell the picture of how much better this looks, and this alignment is so much better, and how much better this door, look at that, how good that door works now. And while I was working on that, I secured this this mirror, but this mirror is going to need, it's loose right here at the pivot, and there's not nothing I can do for that. But I did get it tight on the door, so it might help a little bit. While I was up in the air, I fixed the C and the Corvette on the back. The letter C was messed up, just loose, so I got that secured. And while I had it in the air, I was looking around when I drove it. I smelled just a little oil smell when I drove it, and noticed the valve cover on the driver's side. You can see those on these big blocks where they land on that landing, and that one was leaking just a little bit. And you can see the little oil trail right down and right where it was dripping on that pipe down through there. So it's got cork gaskets on it. So I took and put about, I don't know, maybe a half a turn or less on all of them, and they were really loose right there at the back, towards the rear. So I went ahead and tightened both sides. So I'll give you a closer look at how good this turned out. I got that so much better. You can see how much more accurate that is just by raising it right there, and or lowering it right there and raising it on the other side. So that was time well spent right there. See there, it's much better. Not perfect, but man, it's a lot better. And I got that C fixed. I tried to move this rear deck panel, but I can't move it. It's just not going to work the way it is on there. It's just not going to move. I tried to move it a little bit, but I did get a little bit out of this and got it a little more accurate here. But it was mainly that other side over there that I was working towards. So give you another quick look at that. That turned out really good right there. Okay, Tom, I'm working on your seats now, and I got in the bump stops for the seats, and I've already done the driver's seat. I pulled the driver's seat out, and the hole here had a broken bolt in it. I had to drill it out and tap it. The same here. I just was able to disassemble the top of the seat and through bolt it, and put a nut on the back side of the top one. And I may have to do this one like that, I'm not sure. But while I had that off on the driver's seat, I went in and unsnapped the hog rings, pulled the fabric down, and secured both side brackets were loose. And put your return spring on the release handle. And this one here, I'm going to check all that out, make sure that's good. Then on the tracks, I just did a quick little cleanup and touched up the black just a little bit because they still look kind of rusty and it looks bad on that new carpet that's in there. And also I'm taking out they had grade 8 bolts in there for the seat bolts, and I found some original style seat bolts. I just had to blast them. I'm going to paint them black, and that'll look a lot better there too. I'm going to replace the pivots on both sides, which I've already done on the driver's seat, and secure the headrest. The headrest was a little loose. I went in your door jambs just a minute ago on both door jambs and secured all the screws on the seal plate on the door panels. There were some screws missing. I replaced all the screws that I could replace, and so far so good. Everything's going good. So I'm gonna get this seat cleaned up and the tracks painted and all these parts in, and then move to another thing on the list, maybe the power steering or something underneath. But I just want to give you an update on what I'm doing and how's it going. You can kind of see. Let me show you how that looks under there. Kind of see how that looks, and that's original. This is original seat. I'm just going to clean up these brackets just a little bit. I'm not going to put a lot of time in them. I'm just going to clean them off right quick, pre-clean their little scuff, and shoot some black on them and make them look a little better. Maybe even this piece right here, I might shoot a little black on it while I got it apart. So let me get to work on these seats. I'm going to give you an update on your tail light. So here's the tail light stuff I took out, and looks pretty rough, and it's all rusted, oxidized up. And then here's your new one. So I've got 3 of them in. I got the 2 backup lights, and haven't got the actual turn brake light housing just on one of them. But I went ahead and got them installed, and I put diode electric grease on all the plug, where all the light bulbs go in. That'll keep oxidation out of that socket. And I've got new gaskets and boots and all that. So I'm fixing to put all these in. I'll solder these ends into your original harness. I'm going to fabricate you some new little ground systems that go from link them together, and put new solder in new ends on all on the rear wiring harness. Also got your power steering cylinder. This brand new one. Instead of getting a remanufactured one, this one is brand new. You're just leaking a little bit right there, so that should straighten that out. And went ahead and ordered the hose kit that comes with all the hoses for the power steering. The power steering's leaking pretty good. And now that I got the valve cover fixed, I've got one little leak around the drain plug on the motor, so I'll put a new seal on that drain plug when I pull that out and change the oil. And got the seats in. I've got the speedo cable in. Without removing the cluster and all, I was able to get the original speedometer out, and it wasn't connected for whatever reason. And the new one, I got locked in place and checked it with my drill to make sure that it was working and the speedometer's working, but I couldn't get it to snap. I've tried everything in the world to reach up in there. You just can't reach up in there and get it to snap, but it's all the way up on it, so I've zip tied it in place. And if we have a problem later, then we can take all that cluster out. That's a pretty big job, and I think the way I've got it is going to work. So I'm underneath your car here, and I have got the cylinder in and the new lines in, and it came with the line to go to the pump, but the one in here is brand new, and it's not leaking, it's spotless, so I'm going to leave it, and then we'll just have one extra line. After I tightened these lines, I went back and wiggled them. Sometimes when the car moves and stuff, after you put in a new line, it'll move a little bit, and then it'll back out and leak a little bit. So if you wiggle the lines a little bit and then go back and returbo it, you can always get a little bit, seems like you always get a little bit out of it. And now I'm going to change the oil in it. Now, I always run this oil, especially through a race engine like this, I'll run it through a paint screen. This thing's like 280 microns, so it'll catch pretty much anything. And this motor has 5W30 oil in it, so it should run through it pretty good. It might overflow a little bit, but I'll catch the most of it. And I've cleaned my pans out real nice and clean so that I can see anything. You just never know. You might find a little valve retainer or a little piece of something that can save the day, but I don't see any signs of it. This is one of the smoothest, quietest valve train 454s I've ever driven. You don't hear the engine at all. You just hear the exhaust out the back. So it seems like a very nice engine. So I'm fixing to drain this down, and I noticed there was a little drip here, so I went and got you two different type seals, and I got one with a little O-ring. I think I'll probably put this little O-ring one back in there. So I'm going to drain all this oil down and then run through the screen and look see if there's anything in it. But I pretty much strained every bit of it through this. See if that was the leak, and it's hard to tell, but it looks like it's leaking right around this front here. So I'm going to straighten that landing all the way around, and then I'll actually glue the new gasket to this pan, and then I'll use an RTV on the top side of it, and it'll be a really good seal. It'll get pre-cleaned and all that before. And then your filter, you can see it's got just a little blackness on it, so it's not bad. Hardly any shavings in the bottom of the pan. Set this aside. You know, you see in there, it looks really, really good. The only thing is, there's one detemp ball in there. I don't know if you can see in that camera, but yeah, there's one little detemp ball down the bottom of that. Transmission seemed to be shifting good and doing good, so I mean, it could have gotten dropped. I really don't know, but under that valve body is probably where it came from, or I really don't know. I know the transmission seemed to work fine, but we'll research this a little bit more before we put this pan back on. All right, Tom, I guess the mystery of the check ball will just go on, because I took all this down. Got your new pan back in place, and I've got it just sitting there. I've got it just every one of your bolts are just snug down just a little bit, and allowing that RTV to seal. I glue it to the pan and let that set overnight, and then just put a little bit of, just a super thin layer of RTV right there, and then once that sets up, then I'll tighten it on down, and that'll be a good solid solid seal there. I haven't had one leak yet, and it makes it where this is serviceable, so when this comes down, that RTV will give loose and the other gasket will stay on this pan, and you can reuse it if you need to, but it makes good solid seal. Then on that first shift that was so delayed, I back this out at one full turn. That should make it shift just a little bit sooner. We'll see how that does, see if that helps any. But and when I pulled the valve body down, you have 6 check balls in there right now. So I don't know where the 7th check ball came from, but it was just laying in the bottom of the pan. But so far so good on all that. Looks nice, looks clean, new gasket and a new filter in there. So let that set for about another 45 minutes, do a final tighten on it, and that'll be good. And you can see here how this exhaust opened up. I moved those brackets on both sides that were under a lot of tension. When I loosened them, they popped right up, and these fit perfectly through there now. So I'm hoping that'll not make any noise. I don't know why they had it pulled down so hard, so I'll just have to drive it and see, but as it stands there, they're in a perfect spot. Had to trim this bracket off. This bracket was touching the side of the exhaust right there, so I trimmed it. I need to come back and touch that up with just a little bit of paint. But yeah, mystery of the 7th check valve. Have no idea. I've already got your backup lights all done. The LEDs are in place, and the new light housings and the wiring and all that. And I had to do some work on the wiring up all the way up onto the console, and then then when I got all that squared away, still didn't have any current coming through the reverse switch. So I ended up having to pull all that console up and pull that switch out, and took that switch apart and cleaned it and did some adjustments to it, and it's working good now. Hopefully it'll work for a long time. If not, you may have to get one eventually, but it seemed to be one of the brass contacts was bent down just a little bit, and I raised it up, so I don't know what bent it, but anyway, it's working good now. Then also I got your fiber optics coming. So this is the end of one of your fiber optics, which runs that indicator in the console. So if you turn it on left turn, it'll flash there and let you know that that light's working, the tag light, or the right turn. And you know how hard it is, or very few of these work. And well, that's because just the age and the technology back then. So what I've ordered is some shielded solid core, I think it's like 4 millimeter solid core fiber optic, and I ordered three strands of it, and I'll run that up and plug it back in, and then with that, the LED lighting supplying that light, they ought to really be bright and work well. All right, I want to show you, as I tear all your stuff down and take it apart and all that, I try to fix any nuts and bolts and screws and stuff as I go back together with it. And like this, I noticed your little shield here for your shifter was all bumped right here, and its centerpiece wasn't staying in there. Well, there's some pieces on it that aren't there, or it's a little, we're not sure what's missing, but that to hold it in place. So what I did is just went in here and fabricated up a little couple of pieces of sheet metal. It's not tight. I'll tighten it all up when I put it in, and some foam, and just extended it off of these nuts, and it'll hold it there, and then that'll hold that back on there like that, and then that'll give a guide for this to go down in there. Probably could get one of these new. I don't know, but this is the original one, which is pretty cool for this car. So I might just keep it in there, and that'll look better. But I try to do that in every section I work. Try to fix, repair, and tighten. And like the other day, or actually this morning, I was out here looking at it, and I noticed some of these screws. If you tap these grates, especially the one in the front, there's screws completely gone in it, and that grate's rattling a little bit. So I'm gonna go in there and put new screws everywhere that it needs, and then check these two and make sure they're tight, and put grates in there. I mean, screws in those grates too. But I just want to show you how I'm trying to fix everything as I go back together with it. While I got it apart, might as well, when it goes back together, try to fix it up a little bit. All right, Tom, I've got it back on the lift, and you can see that pan gasket is dry as a chip. I thought it might be that shifter shaft, but it is dry as a chip. And I backed your modulator out 2 turns. So I backed it out 1 turn and drove it, and it shifted a lot sooner. You know, we was talking about that delayed shift. And so I backed it out 1 more turn, and it might be about right. I'll have to test that and see. But the leak was one of these transmission lines. So this lower line right here had just a little bit of leak. That's what I was seeing on the ground. So I had tightened that up and cleaned all that back off, and now there's nothing leaking. I don't think. Knock on wood. But so glad I ain't got to take that shifter shaft seal out, because you can see how dry all that is. It is really dry. You can see how I fixed all that heat shielding on this side. All that heat shielding had come loose by that pipe. I use that heat shield product, sticky shield on there, and that stuff really works good. As I was doing your inspection around on the exterior of the car, and I found a few things loose. Like some of your 427 badges and the 2 chrome vents up front were loose. I just went around and tapped around, and they were shaking pretty good. But this panel here, it was really loose. And as I was checking it out, you've got like 8 bolts holding this in, 8 screws, and only 4 of them were holding, and the other 4 were either stripped loose or whatever. But so I went back in there and I re-tapped all those and put in some brand new stainless steel bolts in that, or screws in that, and then put a little bump stop right here in the middle, because this one was wore, I guess, from all that time being loose. And also I went in there and secured up all this. Some of the screws were missing. One of them was actually broken. I had to drill and tap it, and I've got this piece laying pretty good, and got this piece in good shape. So I'm fixing to put it in there and then tighten it back down, and this won't be rattling anymore. All right, Tom, I just want to give you a quick update on how I'm doing all your wiring in the entire car. Every wire has been butt connected, cleaned, and soldered, and then heat shrink. So I'll pull this heat shrink up and solder it. But you can see how nice and good of a repair that is, and that'll last a long time. I've been doing it like this, soldering heat shrinking this for a long time. Never had a failure. And a lot of these old cars in the 60s, 70s, that front harness in the front for the headlights and all that is done the same way, and I've never seen a failure. Those headlight joints are all soldered just like that, and that works very well. Then inside here, I have got your new LED bulbs, and I've got dielectric grease down in that socket, and then I've made all new grounds for all that. So waiting on the fiber optics to come in. But that's going to be a good solid repair, and I've got all the backup lights in and working already. So these things will be nice and bright. But I just want to show you how I do all the wiring and everything that I've touched. The whole time we work on your wiring, I've been doing your battery disconnect in between it all, and I've kept noticing this 12, maybe 10 gauge wire that's wired directly into the positive cable. So I raised it up and traced it out. It looks to me like it's run the MSD, the best I can tell without taking the dash apart and cutting a bunch of wires loose. It looks like it runs right into that MSD for your engine, and it's right up there under your dash. But it is directly wired in with a terminal connector on it, and I can move it around and you can see the wires moving, so I know it's a little bit loose. But that's such a big wire. I've seen those ground out before, and that battery is pretty stout, so anything that wire is laying on, it's going to probably burn a hole in it. I mean, it is really going to be bad the way it's wired. So I'm going to put you a fusible link in here just in case. But as I trace it, this wire actually goes down and it's taped to the fuel line all the way down the fuel rail. So it's like the worst wire that you could put in without a fusible link. All right, I'll show you what I've got going on here. So it's this wire right here, and it's wired directly in. I started loosening it, but I want to show you what I'm going to do first. And that's a pretty good size wire right there, directly wired in. And if it was to ground anywhere, I've seen it happen. It's not good. I mean, all right, back in here now you can see I've soldered in you a fusible link, and I have another 30 amp fuse there. Looks like it's just running that MSD, so that'll be more than enough. And if you need another fuse, got one right there. Dielectric grease in there. I'm gonna put a little thin layer of dielectric grease on that, and that cleans that up and makes that a lot more safe. All right, Tom, after doing all the work that we did on the car, you want me to take a look at this rear end. Now, you just had this totally rebuilt, just installed, and basically just drove it straight to my shop after all this was totally rebuilt for the positive traction unit in the center. I guess the positive traction gears were making a little noise, or something was making a little chatter in there, and they fixed that. Now, I have no idea what they did, but probably just put a carrier in it, and in doing so, sometimes you have to pull that pinion back out and reset that pinion depth. So it's a good chance they didn't do that. I'm really not sure, but I'm going to tear it down and take a look at it and see what's going on, see what's making that noise under acceleration, because the car has a lot of power, and when you're accelerating on it, I mean, you can feel it pulling hard, but you can also hear that whine in that rear end that it did not have before they repaired the carrier gear. So let me get it tore down. I'll show you what it looks like inside here after I get it tore down, and we'll see what happens here. But in my opinion, it's probably going to be something with that pinion. They probably didn't take that pinion out and reset that pinion depth to match the new carrier. Probably just put the old gears right back on that new carrier. That's the quickest, easiest way to do this, and then send it on its way. But let's get it apart and checked out and see what's happening. All right, Tom, I got it out here, and I just want to give you a look at how nice all this looks under here. I mean, it's very nice, very clean. All the U-joints look good. And then over here is the unit. And I'm going to take it apart and just doing a little preliminary check on it. And I don't feel any backlash whatsoever in that. So it could just be that pinion's a little too deep. And after checking it out, turn my light on, it helps a little bit. You can see the pattern in there. It's all the way in, and then it's kind of pointed. All the way in and kind of pointed. That's the drive side of it. And then on our chart here, which this chart's pretty accurate. I mean, I've been using these for years. They come in the Yukon gear axles, and if you go by it, it'll be pretty good. I've had really good success with it. So this is the drive side and the inner end of it, and that's exactly what we've got right there. And we've got a bunch of them that look like that, you know, that's just too deep, and we're shooting for it to be right in the middle of that, a little bit not touching here and right there. Tom, I got the carrier out, and after I got the axles out and the caps off and the axles out, I actually just pulled this carrier right out. It's like there was really no preload on the sides of it. I could put these packs back in there and just push it right back in and take it out with my hands. It needs a little bit of preload on those bearings. That thing will walk back and forth. Every time you get on it, it wants to push it out of it, and it'll push it away from it. And that could have a lot to do with our noise, why it kind of came and went, along with the pinion being a little bit deep. So I'm gonna take this pinion back out, and then I'll change the spacers in the caps, and I'll actually kind of have to drive this in there to be so tight, but it has to have preload on these tapered roller bearings. I want to show you this. This has tapered roller bearings as well, and it's supposed to have preload on it too, like 5 to 10 pounds or something like that. I have to look in there and make sure, but it has to have preload on it, and yours has no preload. It's just free spinning, almost a little slack in it, but yeah, that's not going to work. I pushed the bearing, had to go ahead and push the bearing off of the pinion here, and check what spacer, what shim they have in here, and it's about 26 thousandths, I guess, somewhere in there. I know it's a little deep. This is a little bit of a guessing game here, but I'm going to just split that half in two, and I have got, well, this one's actually 14 thousandths, so almost half in two, and then press this on here, then set it all back up again, and see where that pattern is. And if that's not enough, I've got a few more shims. I've got all the way down to 9 if I have to go there, but hopefully just splitting that one in half here, or close to it at 14 thousandths, will do it. So I'm going to press this back on here, put all this back together, and then recheck it. I wanted to show you this carrier. It's supposed to have preload on both sides. I don't remember what it is. I've got it in the book, 5 or 10 pounds of preload, and usually set all that up, and the way these little adjusters are, the shim packs, you drive them in there and add that tension. This has none of it. I mean, you can see I pull it right in and out, and there's no, it's even a little loose in there. And so is like the crush sleeve doesn't even look crushed, because I could just spin it. The pinion was just so free with it. So I think it may have never gotten actually, it may have gotten set up and then just never crush sleeved, and the bearing pressure tightened up right here. It just got missed or something maybe. I think it's the biggest problem with it. But it did damage the bearing, the front pinion bearing. So I'm gonna put 2 new pinion bearings on it. I guess where that pinion was vibrating and moving, where the bearings have put little divots in the race. So I've got all that ordered and pick it up in the morning. So I'm gonna take this apart and then and tear it all down so I can put the new bearings on. But I just want to show you how easy it is for that to come out. It should not be that easy and actually be loose in there. All right, Tom, a little quick update on it. I finally got it. I've had it in and out a lot of times. Setting up the preload on that, or the pinion depth on the pinion, factory was set at 30 thousandths. And when I tore it down, they had like 26 thousandths, I think, in it. And here's all my shims over here. So I ended up moving it back to 18. It was still too deep. At the 26, it was still too deep. And moved it to 18, it was still too deep. I moved it to a 10 thousandth shim, and it was too shallow, and brought it back to a 13, and it put it right in here. I mean, it's almost got a pattern all the way across where it's sitting nice and flat on there, and that's about as good as I can get it. That gear has some wear on it, and not bad wear, just it's been broke in real good. And then there's a little bitty landing up inside there, just from where it's wore into that spot. That I worked on this backlash quite a bit. I've moved this several times right here to get it. I was trying to get below 10. It's 6 to 10 on the backlash. So right now I've got it right at 9. I tried to tighten it up. When I try to tighten that up, it gets it on that little wear spot right there and makes the end of the gear touch, and it goes instantly to like 6 and pulls it off of that, so it don't even touch right there. So I backed it. Like I say, I've had it in and out a bunch of times, and this is its sweet spot right here is 9 thousandths of backlash, and then it gives me a really good consistent pattern all the way around, as good as I could. When I had the 10 in there, it was way out here, and then when I had the 18 and the 26 was really pushing hard. Then when I put the 13, it's got right in there, so it's really good pattern on that. And I've got a good preload on the pinion. I've got a good preload on this. I've had to really kind of press it in there to get that to fit, so it feels nice, tight, and smooth. And then this is my day of shimming. So I've had these shims in and out several times, just getting the pinion depth and all that to work with the new carrier and the gears. So I think I'm ready. I'm going to go sleep on this and then come in tomorrow. I'll check it one more time, and if that's the case, it all seems still good, which it will be, I am going to put it in. I've went in here and cleaned it all again, and I filed the face of that, then cleaned it all again, and I'll pre-clean the face of that and then glue that in place. But as it stands, it is extremely smooth. It turned out nice. When I had my pattern, showing my pattern in there, it lays right in the original path of the wear that was already on the gear. So that's kind of what I was fighting on that backlash, is where that gear has got where the two have worn together, which there's nothing wrong with that. Beyond that has never been touched by gear. So when I would bring that backlash, the backlash is about 9 to 10 thousandths, and that's probably where it was before, real close, because if I bring that carrier any closer to that, it hits that little lip. I mean, and I set up a few times, and only a few thousandths in would go from say 9-10 thousandths backlash to like 2-3. So there's that few thousandths. That's probably 4 or 5 thousandths of wear that's in between there. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how it is. It just makes it difficult to set up, especially when you had it did have the wrong pinion bearing shim in it. Factory was 30. Had a 26 in it. It was still buried in the front of the gear, so I made a big move the first time to see how it would affect on the pattern. So I took that 26 out and put a 10 in it, and I saw it brought that pattern all the way over to the other side of the gear. So I went back to 18, which I thought would kind of be midways, but it put it too far deep. So then I backed out to 13, which, keep in mind, every time I do this, I have to completely set it up, set the backlash, shim it. I mean, it's a lot of work. Press the bearing off of the pinion in the press, pull the shim out, put the new shim on, but there's really no other way about it that I have, here. So that's how I do it. But I've got it right on the money right now, and it is just so smooth, and it's laying exactly on the pattern the way it was when this gear was initially set up the first time. So yeah, I'm real stoked about that. I think it's gonna be good. So let me get this pre-cleaned, get this cover on. I'm gonna fill up with fluid. You had mentioned some additive you want me to put in it, but with these new clutches in here and this pause unit, they recommend only having the limited slip additive. I have in the past put synthetic in these before that didn't have the additive. This was years ago when I was doing some drag racing, and it'll get embedded in those clutches, and then your clutches will start slipping. Or you can put an additive in there and it make the clutches start chattering. And the only way, once they absorb that material, it wicks into those clutches, the only way to fix it is to take it apart and change the clutches. So right now, the best thing would be to put in exactly what the manufacturer of this carrier recommends, and that's what I'm gonna put in there, and only that, and we'll have good success with that. So I'm gonna put it back together. All right, Tom, I got your valve covers off, and we're going to put the original orange-looking valve covers on there. And these were actually leaking on both corners, which is kind of normal for that. They just need to retighten. But now we got new valve covers. I put on premium seals, and I've got those glued in place, and I've let that set all day so that stays nice and strong on there. And then I'll pull these down and then drive the car and do a heat cycle on it, and then come back and pull them down just a little bit more after it does one heat cycle on it. But I also wanted to show you what the inside of the motor looks like while I got the valve covers off. So inside the motor here, you can see you've got a really nice, really clean roller tip. Looks like comp cam rockers. Can't see what the ratio is on them, but yeah, guide plates, hardened push rods. I'll give you a look at all this side, that way you have this for reference if anything ever happens. I always look to see if all the nuts are even, and they're pretty much even. There's no signs of any wear or anything like that, so that looks pretty good. And then on this side here, had to pull this tank out, but all this side looks nice as well. So I'm going to put these new valve covers on and the new decals on, and this part will be done. There's your inner breather, and there's the hose. There's 6 large hoses with screens on there, and it's on there very nice, epoxy in place. But we've decided to close those off. So I found these. These are actually hood insulation clips I've had. I've got a bunch of these, and cleaned it up, pre-cleaned this, pre-cleaned that, sanded this, and then I'm gonna 2-part adhesive that over each one of them, and then I'll put some black paint over it, and you'll never know it. It'll probably last forever. That 2-part bonding adhesive ought to wick into that filter, that little screen, pretty good, and probably hold it so you won't ever have to buy another one. But that's a lot of heat coming in up under that, into that breather, and it's not really filtered. And I don't know. I think it's a good idea to get these covered up. So I'm going to show you how this turned out. So I've got the 2-part bonding adhesive. I use a 3M bonding adhesive. It takes overnight to set up because I want to make sure they stay in place. So I got them all glued in. I put some paint back over them. It already had remnants of that adhesive they had used, so it's not real pretty, but it is definitely in there good and strong. And the best I could do, I had to glue 7 in and try to keep those in place, and glued in for almost an hour before they start setting up. And it's in there good. Turned out pretty good, and they're sealed off now, so I can put this back on now. Alright, Tom, well finally we're all done with everything. I went all up underneath it, done some steering work, changed the transmission fluid, cleaned a bunch of stuff up underneath there, cleaned up your tire, your spare tire rack, changed the exhaust, moved the body, changed your valve covers, changed your oil, changed your transmission fluid, secured your seats. Just so much little stuff. Fixed all the taillights, the LED, the wiring, but I'll give you a little walk around now that it's all said and done, and show you how the engine bay worked out, because it looks so much better taking those chrome valve covers off and putting the factory orange ones on there. In my opinion, the engine bay looks a lot better. So let me give you a closer look. So you can see those new orange valve covers. Looks so much better in there, so much more at home. I love that. Filled the holes up underneath that breather, so all that heat off that intake and all that was going up in there, and closed all that off, and leveled all this, changed the drilled and tapped the screws that were missing, and then put all new stainless steel screws in that, and raised that, and moved this fender. Secured these emblems, secured these chrome inserts. They were loose. Got that body a lot better. Let me let this hood all the way down. Now you can see before how that corner was up real high, and none of that was in line right in there. And all that is really turned out nice. Considering I can't move it a lot, I moved it around a little bit. That door fits a lot better than it did. Then inside there, I got those lights working down through there for the fiber optics from the rear tail light. So it runs up for your turn lights, backup lights, shifter knob painted red. The seats, I took those out and apart, and you saw all that. And there she is. She is coming home to you.